Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Virginia Country Club and the 7th Annual California Teaching and Coaching Summit. We are excited to host all of you for what should be an incredible day of learning today. My name is Melanie Ferruta, and I'm the Membership Director here at Virginia Country Club, and I'll be your host for the day. At this time, we'd like to welcome Jamie Mulligan, CEO of VCC, PGA professional, and co-chair of the Teaching Summit, to say a few words.
Thank you. For you younger golf pros, I would try shaving every other day. Every time I shave, I cut myself. So just a little tip there. We're going to start out not laughing at me again as we do every time here. Anyways, nice to have everybody to Virginia Country Club. I think we're going to have a great day. This has been a labor of love for Randy and I to get to put this together along with the section and do all the great things that they do. Randy, thank you for all your behind the scenes and in front of the scenes work. Let's give him a hand. And we like to say to our members, or when they have guests here, when they come to the gates, feel like you're on vacation here and enjoy the country club the way that we do on a daily basis. So really enjoy Virginia. We've worked really hard on our practice facilities that we're super proud of, and want everybody to kind of see what we've done out there. Really excited about the speakers. I have my buddy Boyd here, Todd Anderson, and I'll tell you about these two guys. We get to walk and watch golf a lot, and I think that will be the theme of what we talk about today is a lot of golf happens on the driving range, and many of our lives are on the putting green, and that we're getting to watch golf all the time, and we do it together. And that's some of the best times of my life to get paired with one of those guys' players and cruise around. He's a fabulous career, and Todd's had a fabulous career, and you'll have a great morning with them. And then super excited about the afternoon, Derek and his guys with the Carl Welty, kind of the godfather of video, and all the different things that you're going to see that happen in that, how to give a video lesson, et cetera, et cetera. Jim McLean's son, John. Craig, his son, Doug Timmons, and Derek, they'll put on a really nice show for you. And then as you look around the room, when we used to do these summits, not everybody looked fit, and now everybody in the room looks fit. And if you look at tour players, they look like they could play Major League Baseball or they could play football. They all look super fit. And the game has turned that way, and what Leo Rooney will tell you with UGP will be really helpful. And then our guy, Michael Block, we're gonna have a lot of fun on the first tee tonight talking about how to make your golf game better and what he does to make his golf game better. So we should have a fabulous day. From the bottom of my heart, it's nice to have everybody here. Thanks for all the good things that you do for the game. Welcome to Virginia Country Club and the 7th California Coaching and Teaching Summit.
Thank you, Jamie. Let's dive right into our first segment. Boyd Summerhays is a longtime friend to Jamie and our VCC family. After a successful collegiate career at Oklahoma State University, Boyd played golf on the PGA Tour before shifting into teaching the game. Boyd's family has a rich golfing history. His uncle, Bruce Summerhays, is a winner on the PGA Champions Tour and former instructor. His younger brother, Daniel, played 8 seasons on the PGA Tour, and his cousin, Carrie, is a former LPGA Tour player. Boyd has been recognized by Golf Digest as one of the top 50 teachers in America and also as a Golf Magazine Top 100 instructor. He teaches out of Silverleaf Club in Scottsdale, Arizona, and coaches 6-time PGA Tour winner and 2-time Ryder Cupper Tony Finau, current U.S. Open champion Wyndham Clark, and 2023 Live Golf individual title winner Taylor Gooch. He also enjoys helping golfers of all skill levels to improve. One of the most impressive things about Boyd is his ability to take a player from junior golf to playing at the highest level, which he will speak on today during his segment. A prime example of this is his own children. His son Preston is an All-American junior at Arizona State University and is currently ranked number 12 in the men's world amateur rankings and is also a former U.S. junior amateur champion and a member of the victorious USA Walker Cup team at St. Andrews this past August. His daughter Grace is also a junior at ASU and was a first-team Pac-12 all-conference selection and ranked during her sophomore season in the top 50 by GolfStat. His youngest son Cameron is also an up-and-coming junior golfer with a bright future. Please join me in warmly welcoming Boyd Summerhays.
Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it. Virginia Country Club I can see why everyone loves it so much. It's a special place. It's the people. So, Jamie, I appreciate the invite. I've known Jamie a long time, always been super kind to me ever since I got out on tour with some players. And it means a lot to me when you invited me to come. I was like, of course. I don't do this very often because the off weeks I'm always traveling with my kids at their tournaments and whatnot, but I wanted to be here. Jamie, I appreciate your contributions in my career. It means a lot to me. So I'm going to talk about junior golf, helping them through their development and getting them to college, hopefully, and on to the next level. How many of you here, who's taught the longest here? Anybody think they are up in the leaderboard there? Do we have any plus 30s, plus 40s, plus 50s? That's awesome. How many years in the business?
Can't count.
Yeah. Very cool. Any teachers here that are relatively new? How many years in the business?
I've been in business for a long time, but I've been coaching.
How long coaching?
4 years.
4 years. All right. How about you?
3 years.
3 years. Anyone less than 3 years? How many years? There we go. That's great. 2 years. Well, we got a wide variety here, and I'm excited to share. In school, I had that ADD piece where I'd sit there, and unless it was a subject I was really interested in, and obviously you guys are teachers and you're interested in what you do and passionate, but even the classes that I did, I would sit there and almost try to remember everything and get a little overwhelmed. Nowadays, when I listen to people speak, if I feel like I learned one or two things that really stick out to me, I feel like I walked away with some ideas and better. And I know as we go through today, I would like to get your feedback on some things and learn from you all too. On Instagram, I follow a ton of teachers. I'm always reading and learning from what other people do. I know there's different ways of doing things, and I'm always trying to get better at what I do. If we're not trying to learn, then we get stagnant, and there's some arrogance that comes with that we think that we're a finished product. And in teaching, there's always something we can do better to help our students. So first off, by raise of hand, who feels like they specialize or the majority of your teaching is junior golf? By raise of hands. Yeah. And if anyone at the beginning started teaching, I'm sure that who's ever done junior programs or worked with juniors, even though maybe you don't do now? Yeah. Almost all of us, right? So I feel like junior golf should be the most exciting to teach, the most rewarding, because we can make an impact with the younger kids. When we get an adult that comes to see us, the conversations change, they've made their own decisions in life, they're set. But juniors, we can teach them the game of golf, but we can teach them the game of life. And so you have two chances to help them. And once a kid and a parent knows that you care about them as people, I think it starts the relationship on the right foot. So what are some of the challenges that you guys have had working with junior golfers? Because it's supposed to be the best, but sometimes it can be pretty challenging. Who makes teaching junior golfers tough? Okay, let's see. Parents, all bolds, underlined, starred. Okay, so that's where I start. When I work with a junior golfer, I don't involve the parent as much once I get started, but being a parent of 3 kids, when my daughter swam, I wanted to meet the teacher. I wanted to see who my daughter was going to be training with, or just not just for her swimming development. She turned into a golfer, thank goodness, but to see what type of person, see how they ran their school, their swimming school, and get a feel for what my daughter was going to be experiencing. So the first thing I like to do is, it doesn't matter if people here have a reputation of being a good junior golf coach. As a parent, I still want to know what the philosophy is, what the steps are going to be with my child. And that's what I would want to know. So the first lesson's the longest. Usually, for me, it's if I have not worked with this junior golfer, I'm going to be working with their parents too. That's going to be the biggest thing that I do to set the junior golfer up for success. Because I haven't met many junior golfers that I haven't liked. I've met quite a few parents that make that challenging, okay? So I remember thinking one time, man, this kid is, one kid stuck out. It's like in all my years, like I just don't get it. I don't really enjoy teaching this kid. The thought crossed my mind. And then I'm like, okay, Boyd, the parents. That's why he is the way he is. If anything now, help his parents see the game, how the progression should be to take the heat off the kid. And sure enough, helping the parents made the kid, act differently, see his game differently, and it changed things. So, number one, the parents. So, what percentage of parents are crazy? Is this 99 or 95, 98? Let's say generously 90. Everyone agree with that or less? So this used to bother me. I'd go to junior golf tournaments and I thought I wasn't crazy because I played. I understand how hard the game is. I understand the ups and downs. And I'd be like, man, that parent's crazy. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, you're crazy too. I remember those times where you can over-explain something to your kid, have that conversation after the tournament that lasts way too long. And I've had to learn from my mistakes too. But one of the keys to having successful kids in any sport or any walk of life is usually they come from motivated parents that are a little bit crazy, that are high energy, that are willing to take their kid to the practices, to the lessons, to the events. It's a huge commitment. So as my career went on, I thought, you know what? I'm going to expect that every parent's crazy, just like I am, and the ones that aren't, they're going to be a huge blessing. And it does happen sometimes where a parent hasn't played the sport, hasn't played golf, so they truly are just watching to support. So I remember I was teaching Yushin Lin. He was the Pacific Asian Am champ. So he got in the Masters at 16 and 17. And his mom he spoke perfect English. He's from China. And his mom came to town and he said, can my mom come down on the lesson tee? And that's a no-no for me. After the first lesson, I don't allow that. She only cares because I care. And sure enough, both parents, that's just how they were, and that helped Yushin's career. On the course, he tended to get over things pretty quick. He wasn't going to have a conversation with mom and dad after. He wasn't dreading that mid-round. So being a good junior golf coach is dealing with the parents, okay? So the first lesson is usually 2 to 3 hours. I do 3, but if you want to do 2 or 3, and a parent may say, well, that's a lot of time. And I always look at it this way. That's how I do things. That's how I believe things are best for the junior player. If the parent doesn't want to do that, then it's just not a fit. No harm, no foul. But that's what I believe in. So the first time I get together with a parent, I tell them, hey, this is your one chance to tell me everything about your child, all his strengths and weaknesses, the things he does wrong, right? And they'll rattle them off. But it gives them a chance to feel like they've been heard, seen, and honestly, you do get a great perspective from the parents. You know, I'm going to learn what the kid is like, what the student is like, but having the advantage of having a parent really get to know, it lets you get to know their kid, their personality, and you get a feel. It's very revealing when a parent talks about their kid's golf game. And so then you already know what you're a little bit up against, okay? So some of my favorite lines from a parent that usually they're not that good at golfers, but you decelerated. How many times you hear that one? Never up, never in. I always say, and they have the funny saying, hey, 100% of putts left short, 99% of putts short, don't go in. And I always say 100% of putts that go past the hole don't go in. So when you learn the strokes gained, a tour pro from 32 feet, if he 2 putts, it's 0 strokes gained. Well, a junior golfer, when they're really young, when they're 2-putting from 20 feet, they're gaining against their competition. So I never liked the idea of never up, never in. It doesn't matter if it's a little short, little to the right, little to the left, little pass, that's a 2-putt. As they get better, the expectation changes. So I kind of, in a joking way, in a real way, is talk about these things that I've seen that aren't helpful to the kids, so the parent in front of the kid, they get held to that standard. Because I can teach a junior golfer, and we'll talk about it later, the proper expectations, the proper steps, and how it's going to be up and down the process, and getting a little better, then a little worse, and then a lot better, then a little worse, and it's just a little climb. Well, if the student understands the process, but the parents don't, I've still failed. And so I take educating the parent even more seriously than the junior, because I'm going to be able to make my impact on the junior the more time I get with them, the more I see them play, and just the more I get to know them as a person. So what challenges have you seen with parents? Any ideas, or what's the worst thing that you run into with a parent? What's some of the challenges? Because that is the biggest thing for me, is if I can get a good dynamic for the junior, they can reach their potential a lot easier, obviously.
Just talking so negatively in front of their child, so you
Yep.
about how terrible they chipped and how bad the driver was and how they're not doing that, and their child is standing right next to you.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great point. And if you understand the psychology of the game, if the parent says that in front of their kid, in front of their coach, what does that child know? What does that student know their parents are saying while they are playing a tournament round?
Everything bad.
Everything bad. And you'll get that in a tournament where the kid is looking at the parent, wondering what that reaction is. And yet the student, the player, should only be thinking where they can say, hey, he can't chip, she can't putt, has no course management. We'll get into that later. I always think, well, why did your kid hit it over there? Well, I'm like, well, he still or she still sucks still. Or they hit bad shots. They weren't trying to go over there. We got to get their technique better, and they're supposed to make all these mistakes. This is not a surprise. Okay, so, and then I like to go through, I get this question too, right in the first lesson. Can my kid play Division I? I'm like, okay, where are we starting from? And then when you think about the steps, because it takes what it takes. Nick Saban says that, and I like that. No one really takes a shortcut. They first got to get to their, my daughter was a swimmer, turned into a golfer. Her first few tournaments were miserable as far as how she felt. She was so nervous. It took her a year or two of getting in competition to start to learn how her body felt. That became a little more familiar early on, but then as she got better, she had to deal with getting in contention, not losing a lead, all these steps that just experience can only provide. Okay, so when I think of a parent saying, okay, can I get to D1? It's like, okay, well, let's first make their club team or their junior high team, then the high school team. Let's just get then we got to get in the top 5 or 6, depending on how many kids play in high school golf here. It's 5 in Arizona where we're at. And then once you're the 5th man, then you're trying to keep your spot. And if you want to go D1, you probably got to be better than the 5th man on a high school team. And so you got to get to the 3rd spot and then the 1st spot. And there's all these steps. And then you got to get recruited, and they got to play good in front of a coach. And then once they go to college, if they're lucky enough, they got to make that team. And then they got to keep their spot on the team. And then to go pro, they eventually got to be, unless their team is amazing, probably the top player on that team. And you just take them through all this process. And if they're lucky to get on tour, well, they got to get through the Korn Ferry or the Symetra or the Epson. And then they got to get on tour, keep their card, and you got to get invited to the bigger events. And the list goes on and on and on and on. And so you want to just paint that picture, but then the next step's the only one that's important, right? And it simplifies it. So dealing with the parents is a huge deal. I let the parents in the first visit go through a strengths and weakness chart. So I have it on history. They get to list everything. I give them the ideas in the strength and weakness chart to get the student, and the student and the parent are writing at the same time. It's 3 of us, 3 chairs, got a clipboard, and they're writing. It depends at the skill level that they're at. As the player gets better, this strength and weakness chart gets really detailed. But depending on the quality of the player, it's going to be the glaring things, and you might have to ask some questions to pull out some of the finer details. So I let them know I want it as detailed as possible, that in time, if they miss more than I miss, because who should know their game the most? The student. They know what they're feeling, thinking over shots, what is going on. And so obviously the first time I've seen them, I'm trying to get the most input from the player, and then usually the parent is the one that has seen them play the most, okay? So I give a category for mental toughness or give them an idea, putting, and they'll write down a strength of putting. And then I'm like, okay, lag putting. How are you there? How are you from 25 to 15 feet? How are you from 10 feet and in? How are you from 5 feet and in? Left to right or right to left? You tend to be short, tend to be long. And I'm gathering all this information, but also letting them know that, okay, as we move forward and we progress and get better, we're going to be way more detailed because we're looking for the details, right? If we look at a lot of different areas of the game and we get just slightly better at those, well, they start to add up. Physical attributes, whether that's strength, height, whether they have a limitation as well, I want to know. Chipping, pitches, bunkers, 50 yards and in, recovery shots, iron game, their golf IQ, course management, game management, two different things to me, their experience, wedge game. And so as they're writing, and I see that not much is getting put down, I give them some areas of the game that kind of will spur their thought process to get a nice list, okay? Were you guys able to pull up any of those photos? Okay. Let's go to the, there's like a aqua big board with some strengths and weaknesses on it. This is Grace's about 4 years ago. And then I'll show you Preston's from after he got done with his, let's go through it. No, it's going to be an aqua background with a bunch of strengths and weaknesses.
Hey, Boyd, real quick, what
Yep.
age would you start this with?
Oh, it doesn't, just right from the beginning. Right from the beginning. And it's going to be pretty generic when they're younger. I mean, because it's pretty easy to help a player that's not as good. And so it may only take them 10, 15 minutes. As the player gets better, this list can get a lot bigger. So I like to have them put their goals, their strengths, weaknesses. So I don't know if it's visible there, but when I have students do goals, I like a lot of goals because you don't want one big goal, and then if they don't accomplish that, they feel like they're a failure. So there's a lot of process or skill set goals that they have. And she has that in her room. Every student I have has a clipboard, and we'll go through what they kind of have in their clipboard, and they bring to lessons, and they keep in their bag during the lessons and group lessons and camps. Can you go to the other one that has like 6 pages with a bunch of small writing? And I don't want people to see my kids' strengths and weaknesses and goals, but you get some idea of what they're doing here. So Preston, he's trying to make it out on the tour. He wants to win major championships, and he wants to be the best player in the world. So his strengths and weaknesses are going to get a lot more detailed. So he goes into the very specific strengths as far as what type of shots he's good at around the greens, what type of bunker shots. He's going to put a weakness that he's not great at rough play yet, but he puts as a strength, he has the speed and face control that he could be a good rough player, okay? So, and then he has his goals for the off season. He doesn't put them too far out in advance. He knows what he wants to do long term. But when you look at some of this detail, that's someone that is trying to find a quarter of a shot, half a shot over a season. And he keeps that in front of him. So ever since my kids have been young, they have a stack of all their strengths and weaknesses. And to me, when I look at this, we need to know the strengths because I'm a huge believer in that becomes your identity as a player, and you got to double down, triple down on your strengths, okay? Rory practices a lot of drivers. Well, if he gets off, and a lot of people say, okay, Rory, he needs to practice his wedges more, his putting. Well, sometimes he drives it so good it doesn't even matter. But that's his identity. If Rory starts hitting his driver bad, then he's in huge trouble, okay? So, and then when it's a weakness, I'm not trying to put that into a strengths category. The goal would be, hey, let's just make it less crappy, less shitty. And then let's get it to maybe it's an average. In tour pros, there's very few players ever that have been good at everything, okay? Tiger Woods, I didn't get to see Jack Nicklaus play, but Tiger and Jack are considered the two best. What was Tiger's weakness? Okay, driver, okay? Phil Mickelson, what was his weakness? Driver. Jordan Spieth. Tony Finau. Okay, well, we're spot on, okay? We could go down and down the list, and these are the very best players. Patrick Cantley is the only player in the world that doesn't have a weakness. And Billy Horschel. But, oh, you are? Okay, Patrick's terrible. You saw him that 16th and 17th and 18th hole. You just can't handle the pressure at the Ryder Cup, right? You guys can work on that. But, yeah, exactly. Virginia Country Club on it or a money sign? Both. Yeah, that's right. So once a student, what was the best part of Tiger's game? Well, he had some huge strengths. That's right. Sorry. One of his greatest strengths was iron play. He's arguably one of the best iron players there ever has. You agree with that? So bad driving doesn't set his irons up as much as he could. But Tiger had one of his strengths as power. So he was able to dance around the bad driving by hitting a bunch of 3-woods and 2-iron stingers. He played his way. He would sometimes lay it way back because he was going to play to his strengths. So I like to explain, and these are the top players in the world. Once you get to the 50th in the world, the 100th, and the 150th, you start to see some glaring weaknesses. But every great player has a few strengths. You don't need that many strengths. You could have a couple strengths and a couple average things and maybe one weakness, and you can work around that. So I like to explain that to the kids early on, that even the best players in the world have weaknesses. I like to explain that to the parents and start having them think that, hey, my kid can have strengths and weaknesses. They're just beginning on their journey. So huge process to me is start the lessons with the parents, try to set an expectation and get their strengths and weaknesses. And then the parents, I tell them, hey, moving forward, you can drop your child off. If they're younger, go ahead and be there, but you're going to be off to the side of the lesson tee, because that is not what is best for the student. I understand that the parent is paying, but that's my job is to help the junior golfer, and I'm very firm on that. And if they don't like that, it's not a fit. They're not wrong for wanting to be there, and I'm not wrong for not wanting them to be there. It's just a different style. So I've just found the first few years of teaching, I was trying to teach anybody, anytime, any place. I was just trying to transition out of golf and just try to be the best teacher I could be where I was teaching in Utah. And it got to the point where I'm like, Boyd, you got to do something different. The parent feels validated, but the kid, it's hurting he's looking at his parent the whole time during the lesson, and how many times does a parent say, see, I told you so? How many times we hear that? All the time. See, I told you were doing that wrong, and they're putting heat on the teacher to tell them, work on the area that they want the kid to work on. Well, I'm going to eventually listen to the kid's strength and weakness chart, and I'm going to be able to see them play, and I'll start to add to that. So anyway, with parents, that's the goal to me. Another thing that helps the parents, and it's for the kids too, but can you put up some of those stats? We'll just go through them. They're pretty generic, but that's the first thing I like the parent to know. If a kid knows that a tour pro makes half of 8-footers, but the parent thinks it's 80%, conversation in the car, you suck at putting, you got to get better. You see on TV, the tour pros make everything. So can you pull a couple of those up? I'll just kind of guide you. There's just some pages with some numbers on there. Okay, right there. Go back there. Okay, so right there, I like this. It's a simple chart where it doesn't have too many distances away, but it has the 1-putt percentage and then the 2-putt and then the 3-putt percentage. So it's pretty obvious that the better the putter is, they hardly 3-putt from a distance from 20, 25 feet, right? It gets to the point where, and I like to set my own benchmarks with the juniors of what would be a healthy expectation. But if you're showing them the tour pros and then you're trying to back off the expectation from that to make it more feasible for them, at least they know, hey, how many times do we see a junior golfer miss an 8-footer and get pissed? A lot. And the parent obviously is pissed. But if I can get them both on the same page with the stats or the golf IQ, I got a lot better chance. Let's go to another one. One more. Okay, never up, never in. Too hard shrinks the hole. Too soft makes it bump offline. So I'm ready with the doubt or the issue I deal with parents before we start. I never want to hear never up, never in. Okay, yeah, of course, from 10 feet and in, we don't want to be leaving putts short, but if a kid can 2-putt from 20 feet, and that becomes easy, then it's 25 feet. But the expectation, even on the tour, 32 feet, you're not losing strokes. Let's go to another one. Okay, some of these right here. Okay, so this is a length of putt. Sometimes a kid will get off the side of the green, and he'll hit a 30-yard chip to 6 feet, and the parent's like, that's just not close enough. Jordan Spieth hits it right up next to the hole. Well, it's not really true. The Tour Pro from 45 feet, let's just make it simple, it's to 4 feet, would be on a lag putt, 0 strokes gained. 55 feet, 4 feet, 4 inches. 65 feet, 4 feet, 11 inches. That's with the putter in their hand. So obviously when we get further away from the hole, chips aren't going to be as close too, okay? And then from the fairway, from 100 yards, 150, 200, it's always shocking to the parent and the student, okay? So let's go to another one. Right here. I like to ask questions in this evaluation of strength and weaknesses. Ask the parent. I like asking the parents first. So, and these are all just, this is a decade. I want to give credit to, I like to take screenshots and keep whatever information who made it on there. But this is so available. You can just punch in, any Google and you'll get all these numbers. So I like to put the parents on the spot. And I always say, okay, from the middle of the fairway, Tour Pro, how close they hit it. They're always at that 5-6 foot mark. But then I remind them, wait a minute, from 65 feet putting, they don't hit it to what you just said. So then we got a chance. And this is the Tour Pro. When a Tour Pro's hitting it from 150 yards, what club are they usually hitting? Wedge to a 9-iron. One of your junior golfers, what club are they hitting from there? 5-wood, 6-iron? What kind of spin can a young junior golfer put on it? Not as much as a Tour Pro, okay? So not only are they hitting 3, 4, 5 clubs more, they can't spin it, they can't hit it high enough for the most part. There are some that can, but the majority, and so I'm trying to just talk them down and get a proper expectation, okay? So when the kids were young, and Preston, say, is hitting it from 100 yards or 100, let's say 150, he was hitting that at a 5-iron all the way up until he was 13 years old. Well, I'm not even going to go to the 200 yard is about a Tour Pro's 5 or 6-iron. I'm not going to say, hey, Preston, we got to get that. I think it's pretty reasonable to say, hey, Preston, from 150 yards, since you're hitting that with a 5-iron, which would be a Tour Pro's 200-yard shot, we need to get it to 53 feet. No, we don't. He doesn't have the landing angle or the spin. So we'll just keep on backing that expectation off. As they get better, and they're moving up into college and D1 and trying to go to the next level, yeah, these become very applicable, okay? So one last one. What do we have? Right here, right here. So here, I had Rich Hunt make these, so it doesn't just have the average, but it has, average to worst. So let's just say there's 200 players ranked on tour on these stats. The best doesn't mean just the very best. He's taken top 10. Best between average, we're saying, 50-ish, average, the 90 to 100, and so on, just so kids know, hey, I don't need to be average or better on everything. There's people that you can look up the players, and I challenge them to do that. And look at some of the players are average or below average on some things, but it's when you get way less than average that it really hurts, okay? So I give these to the parents in a folder, give these kids the folder. Sometimes as they get better, I start having a lot of stats, okay? Another thing so once I've done that, the parent goes, okay? And they'll say, well, I just want to be here. I just want to make sure he does what you're telling him to. Okay, I'll make a video. But even then, what does it matter? I don't even necessarily want you to see it, because how bad is that to be taught by your parent that is just sent you to a coach? So I'm very adamant that, hey, your kid is going to have a video, he's going to have the notes, or she's going to have the notes, and when they get in a bind, they're going to text me. You're not going to text me. That's not how we're going to do it. Occasionally, a parent, I'm fine with them, with healthy questions and healthy things, I'm okay with, but for the most part, I haven't found that, okay? So that's how I do things. Anybody that's had a lot of success with teaching juniors, anything that you feel like you've done that's somewhat unique that's helped you with juniors that could help us here? Any ideas?
We do a parent and junior expectations, and so the coach have to sign it, and to the parents, this is
Oh, man.
you can't do the course, you can't do this, we're not going to use negativity, etc. And the kid has to sign it as well, but with their
I may start doing that. I like that. Put it in writing. Yeah. Just take it that next step further. I'm taking it on their honor, but when they put pen to paper, that's kind of, the terms of the agreement, the boundaries, the expectations, because frustration starts with unmet expectations, okay? And so if the parent expects to communicate with me all the time about their kid and then I don't, well, that's going to frustrate them. But if they already know that it's out in front of them, then they can choose to work with me or not. Well, then they know when they reach out to me at 10 o'clock at night and do a whole email and paragraph about how bad their kid is and how many bad decisions and he doesn't work hard enough and they wish they had an attitude like Sally or Tommy and blah, blah, blah. Like, they've already broken that agreement. So, all right. I want to move on to a couple of my keys I have. So there's Summerhays golf keys that every kid that I've taught knows. It's evolved. You add one or two. Sometimes you take one off over the years. But the first thing that I do with the kids is go over the mental game, okay? Golf, I always challenge them. I say golfers are the softest athletes. I may be wrong, but basketball players, they have all these other teammates and coaches. If their player gets negative out there and is moping, what can the coach do? Pull him. Just bench him, right? Also, that sport's moving so fast that a player may react to a missed layup in basketball, kind of just a natural reaction, but they're already chasing the guy they got to get on the other end of the court. So in football, basketball, soccer, these team sports, and sports that move so fast, the mental game is going to be sharper there because you'll just get sat, or you'll get ripped by your teammates, and also the game is moving at a speed that it doesn't allow you to sit there and mope, okay? So you got 5 hours and sometimes, unfortunately, 6 hours in a junior golf round to keep your mind in a good space. That doesn't mean you concentrate for 6 hours on golf, but you learn strategies to stay in a good frame of mind, because once a kid goes down that road of woe is me, negativity, that not only drains the mental energy, but the physical energy, and then they're frustrated, decision-making process goes down, their body feels different, all the studies show that. So I'm working on the mind, and I try to make it simple. There's a lot that goes into what makes someone mentally tough. Coach, you've been doing this a long time. What's one of the biggest characteristics that you find or want in a player to call them mentally tough? There's a lot of things, but what do you think?
being able to overcome adversity.
Yeah. Being able to overcome. Right? Golf is so up and down. You got the rub of the green. You get bad bounces. And we'll talk about that, the perception of luck. But there's always that mental hurdle to stay positive, fight through the bad times. Billy had a rough patch this year, came out of it, right? They just don't quit. The better players just have this, I'm just going to get through this. And that's why I like starting with the mind, is because once that becomes a habit that you don't know how to quit and that you do expect the game to be tough and have up and downs, then they're more ready to accept that challenge and get through it. Anyone else? characteristics of someone mentally tough? Yeah, go ahead.
What, I guess, sports can you align to that can build their mental fortitude to play in the longer, like you're saying,
Yeah.
how they can stay in the moment longer, or persevering, that perseverance, do you see that being taught through golf or taught possibly just from running to the mental, does that make sense?
Yeah. You're saying how do you build up that mental strength or okay. So the first rule with the kids to build that is no excuses. Accountability. Okay? The parents are still here during the education part. How many times do you hear, "Oh, I just switched drivers." "Oh, I've been sick. I haven't been able to practice." And here's one that I don't let my students use or the parents. "I'm going through swing changes." How many tour pros are working on their technique as the season goes? Every single one of them. So they're making swing changes, swing tweaks, right? So I don't like that to be an excuse. Now that's the obvious ones are, "Oh, I got the worst tee time. There wasn't any wind and then there was." Well, tough. That's everybody gets good tee times and bad tee times, and the person that is more mentally tough and has a positive attitude tends to think he is lucky, or she is lucky. They see what they want to see. Okay. What are some of the excuses you guys hear? The most common, or some of the most common? Huh? Bad lies. Okay. So, great story of that. I was playing with a player. He'd played on the PGA Tour for a year. We were at Q School together, and he was known as a pretty grumpy player, pretty negative player, and he hits it in a divot. And before we could get to the ball, he's let his caddy know, me know, my caddy, everybody know, right? You see Tiger Woods hitting a divot. He goes up there. Lie dictates the shot. He knows how to hit the shot. He hits the shot. It's a really bad break to be in a divot for someone that doesn't have any low point control and hasn't practiced that shot. So if a student says, "Oh, I hit it in a divot," I say, "Well, what kind of divot? Sand divot, front of the divot, back of the divot?" And you work on acquiring that shot. Okay? So it wasn't a bad break. That's called rub of the green. Okay? So no excuses. Be accountable. A good way to do this. How many of you teach juniors in a group? Have you found that effective? I find it really effective. Gives competition, the camaraderie, good learning environment. They can learn from other players. So when I get into groups or camps, we all have a clipboard in the camp, and I allow the players to count the excuses or the complaints of the other players. I can go from the most complaining player to where they won't make an excuse or a complaint all day long. Because everyone's looking for each other's BS, right? So that's been the most effective, is not me saying, "Hey, don't complain about this, that's an excuse." I let the players call each other out. I think that's a super healthy way. And over the years, I just found that, oh my gosh, I wish I would have thought of that earlier. So I warn them straight up, "Hey, who's going to make an excuse today? So let's write them all down." It goes away real quick. The next is, so there's 5 things. There's so many. Go ahead. Sorry.
We have a huge mental game in our camps that are very successful. That helps. I wanted to just give it out there. We put 6 tees in their pocket, and every excuse someone points out, they have to take a tee into the other pocket. And so whoever's left with the most tees on the positive side gets like a prize back. So there's constantly, they'll start saying an excuse, and one will be like, "Oh," and then you got to put a tee back in before he finishes. And so at the end of the camp, whoever has the most tees is obviously the winner. So they're really working in accountability and everything as well with it.
That's a great idea. I love that. The next one is negative self-talk or positive self-talk, the way we talk to ourselves, okay? The Navy SEALs talk about the brain, the mind being the software, the body being the hardware. So to me, in junior golf, we can know what the player is shooting from 3 fairways away, right? Usually, for the most part. Slumped shoulders, slower walk, look dejected. Now, there's some players, my brother, Daniel, inside, he was probably saying some things that were tough on himself and going to a negative place. Like, we're just golfers, we're human, it happens. But he held his outward emotions pretty good. Wasn't a club breaker, wasn't a club thrower. So if a student you see can't control or have good body language, you already know for a fact that it's reacting to what you're saying in your mind, okay? So I always say the self-talk before the outward, but if I can get a student to at least control the outward, then I have a chance at the inward talk, okay? But if I have a student that knows how to talk to himself, I never have to, hey, shoulders back, hey, go on to the next, what's important, the next shot. I don't need to say that stuff. They're already saying positive things to themselves to keep themselves in it, okay? And so a lot of the times I'll say, hey, write down the things that you've said negatively to yourself. What are some of the things you've said positively to yourself to get yourself through the round? And that becomes a big thing. You can also just, try to envision that, hey, if you're caddying for yourself, how would you talk? Caddies are the most positive because that's how they make their living, okay? So to me, you can learn a lot about what you think a caddy would be saying. Hits it to the right of this green. God, we can't leave it there. Caddy never says that, else they are fired, right? Okay? They meet, huh? Okay, there you go. But a good caddy would say, all right, we can get that up and down. They're constantly staying positive to keep their player in a great frame of mind because as players, I was tough on myself. I was too hard on myself. There's a reason why I'm a coach. Failed players sometimes don't turn into good coaches, but my experience was I've been trying to teach the juniors the good things maybe I did, but try to help them on the things I didn't do good. And that was one thing I did. I always controlled my outward emotions. I never threw a club or broke a club my whole career. But I was tough on myself inside. And so, yeah, I wasn't going to get my parents pissed off at me for breaking clubs or acting like a clown because my parents were strict on that. And that is always nice when you have a parent that cares more about the behavior than the actual golf result. But I had to learn in time in my career to control what I was saying to myself. Body language, okay, we talked about that. And so, but I like to truly convince the kids that if they can learn how to talk to themselves, then the body language just kind of takes care of itself. Now, this is a big one because I think junior golfers, more than any group, all ranges of golfers, they get frustrated. And one of the things they get really frustrated about is being in that divot, the bad breaks, okay? To me, I used to say there is no such thing as a bad break with, I was saying it jest, but I changed it to perception is reality. Our perception of luck is how we view luck. Sometimes I play with the kids, and I don't play as good anymore. And in Arizona golf, if you hit a foul ball, you're in the desert. Well, I didn't grow up hitting it really from ages 17 to 20. I didn't hit it as straight as I did when I was younger. And so I got a lot of experience with escape shots. I was good at it. It was a skill set, escape shots. So I'd hit it in the desert, hit it out, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, coach, you got so lucky. And I'm thinking, give me a swing, I've got a shot. That's a skill set for me. So that player thought it was a good break, but in reality, they could have had the same lie, and they wouldn't have been able to hit it on the green. So it's just perception, right? What are some of the excuses we've had or bad? So one of the things I do with the kids is I say, okay, say we have a lesson 1 week, and then it's 2 weeks in between or a week in between. I said, hey, I want you to come back and tell me all about the bad breaks you got. And they already know I'm really strict, so they get kind of nervous about explaining their bad breaks. Preston had one bad break in 2021. It was a Greyhawk national championship, and it ran up against a rake that shouldn't have been there, and it got caught right under the lip. Well, it was a pretty high lip to where even if it didn't get stuck on the rake, in all likelihood, he was still going to have to put it out and not get to the green. So instead of being 50 yards from the green, he could get it out to 100 yards to the green. Strokes gained, that break costed him very little, okay? And a lot of times our bad breaks, what they perceive, are times that don't even matter. It could be in a round that you're shooting 85 and it's not even in contention. But a player that sees bad breaks tends to always see them, and players that like to think they're lucky find a way to see that. And then you think about the players that think they're getting unlucky, they never, for the most part, remember the good break. So I tell a student, hey, if you got lucky in the first 6 holes and you really truly know it, well, when you get what you perceive as a bad break, we're just strokes gained luck back to 0, okay? And I like them to think that way, okay? Write down what, if they have an issue with being a complainer about bad breaks, I like them to list in around what they perceived as a good break, bad break. But in general, luck to me and rub of the green are not the same. So Tony used to spin the ball a lot. Well, he spins it a decent amount, but he spins it a lot less now. He would consistently plug in the lips of bunkers with mid-irons to lower irons. And he kept on just saying, gosh, that is so unlucky. What did I do when I was young to mess up and piss off the bunker gods? And I heard that complaint or that perception of what happened, and finally I said, okay, Tone, all right, from 150 yards and in, you're going to be spinning that ball at 9,000 or more. If you're into a little wind and you leave it short with that much spin, what should the ball do? If it's decently soft in the lips, and you would have known that from a practice round, that's on you. It's going to plug, and if it doesn't, I consider that a lucky break. So once I kind of explain that, is like, hey, when you're going in with that much spin and you come up short, it should plug. Well, instead of thinking it's a bad luck and keep on doing the same thing, it's like, oh, okay. Even though it's only a 5-mile-an-hour wind, if I'm spinning it from 9,000 to 12,000, that's going to affect the distance a lot. And then it was never an issue. He never said anything about that, okay? So even great players, even though they're not Tony is not a complainer, he's not an excuse maker, but he just perceived the situation different than I did. So I think as coaches, we can help with that, because once a student feels like they're getting unlucky, it's so easy to go to that frustration and that bad place mentally, okay? So perception is luck, or perception is the way we see it. Some players see the exact same situation as a good break or a bad break, okay? So same thing, make the list of where people are making excuses. You can do the same thing where all the students write a list of their bad breaks they got in a tournament, and we can all decide together whether that was really a bad break, okay? The bad breaks they list get smaller and smaller as the weeks go by, okay? And then the next thing I consider being mentally tough is getting over bad shots immediately, okay? The most important shot in golf is the next one. Now, this is where it's tricky. I have 3 kids, and all the junior golfers you teach through the years, everyone has a different personality. My oldest, Preston, off the course, he's easy going. Chill, laid back, forgets everything. Typical boy, but I'm super ADD. He is too. He gets over his bad shots by literally forgetting. He doesn't have like he's not an emotional kid, so he doesn't put a huge emotional response into the bad shot. Makes it way easier to get over. But there aren't that many players that are like that. On tour, on both tours, LPGA or PGA Tour, who do you classify as someone that just literally just forgets and moves on? Dustin Johnson, okay? I would say Tony Finau's great at that. Now, do you feel like he just forgets or uses a different tactic to get over it and on to the next shot? Because I'm going to talk about that.
He does feel like that's what he says. Whenever, like, when we were a kid, we were telling that he's a fireman. He's going to put the fire in the field and put out the fires in the water. So you have the water all the time, and that's the field. Somebody's saying stuff to him, it's field. Something happened, it's field.
Yeah.
And then once he's got the tank filled back up, which he always tries to keep it full, then he's just going to move on and go. And we've got to watch him in every circumstance, and he's really good at it.
That's awesome. So to me, I actually wouldn't have classified Patrick as someone that just forgets. Off the course, what's he like? Super intelligent, studious, thoughtful, thinks a lot. That's like my daughter Grace. So I can't treat her like Preston, who on the LPGA Tour just kind of gets over their shit and moves on. Lydia Ko? Anybody else you can think of? You think Tiger is easy come, easy go and just forgets about it? No, I don't think so.
Jack Nicklaus, 19 majors, finished second 19 times. I think he was a champion at that.
Yeah. So the best players in the world get over their bad shots the quickest. For junior golfers, I call it, let that one shot cost you one shot, not the next and the next and the next. So to me, it's either a person that just forgets or it's a person that truly has learned how hard the game is, acceptance, that they're going to hit bad shots. That's how my daughter Grace and my youngest son Cam are. Off the course, they're more high energy. They remember things. They're a little more emotional. And so Grace has had to learn, okay, Tour pros have X amount of great tournaments a season. How many great tournaments, let's not say the top 5 or top 10, but a 50th player on either tour, how many great tournaments do they have in a season? 1 maybe, 2, right? Great tournaments. How many good tournaments do they have? Let's call it a 20 event season. 5 or 6 kind of good. How many blah weeks do they have? Just kind of whatever. Decent amount. And then how many terrible tournaments do they have? Yeah, they have a hand, 3 or 4. So if the student isn't the type that forgets, you have to educate them on just how hard the game is. You have to educate them on the percentages. Preston would have reacted the same after a shot, whether he would have known the percentages or not. It clearly helped him once he knew those things, but it was already easier for him to let go of bad shots. I love teaching the stats and the numbers of it so that that player that can't forget about things, that's not their nature, that they can use knowledge, golf IQ, and stats to be able to move on to the next shot and just accept, okay, it is what it is. I also like helping students that you can tell have a hard time letting go is a post-shot routine, okay? React is the number one. 4 R's, react. Tiger was, gosh dang it, whatever, right? Slammed a club. Tony will kind of be like, tone. Pretty chill, but that's his natural, just instinctive reaction. And the reaction changes every time, okay? It's just, you got to have a release. Everyone releases that initial reaction different. Then it's review. What do I think I did wrong with that shot? A lot of times, a player doesn't really know for sure, else they'd fix it in play. But they know what they've been working on. They know their tendencies, so they have a good idea. And even if they're not dead on, I like the idea that if they process it, they're not over the next shot thinking, oh gosh, wait, was that from too far in to out? Was it a close face? What was it? So review it, then the 3rd R, rehearse it, rehearse the proper technique the best you can. You see that all the time with tour pros and great players. They're off to the side after they've hit a bad tee ball, kind of feeling a feel. And then 4, refocus, let it go, move on. So some players wouldn't even need that. Some players need that process to get back into the right frame of mind. And then I would say, on that line, I used to get this all the time. Parents would watch, it would be paired with Preston, and he is just really laid back. And he understands the difficulty of the game. That combo makes it to where he hits a bad shot, and he just moves immediately on. And a parent will say, well, I just wish my kid was more like Preston. And I'm like, that's not your kid. They're totally different, okay? Trying to make someone that's a more anxious person. My daughter talks to her golf ball nonstop, and I didn't talk to my golf ball. So it kind of annoyed me, and I'm like, Grace, just play. That's negative energy. I was making a mistake. If she didn't let that out, it would build, and guess what would happen 5 or 6 holes later? You could tell she was pissed, and it was affecting her game. So I let her react. I tell her, hey, you model yourself after a Jordan Spieth or a player that has a lot of fire, and kind of learn from how they get over bad shots. And then the players that have the more personality of a laid back or middle of the road player, model your your way of going about things with that player. That makes sense. Next thing is, so that's the mental game. If you can have those 5 things, no excuses, positive self-talk, positive body language, improve your perception of luck, and get over bad shots immediately. Of course, there's other techniques, breathing techniques, visualizing, all the techniques that, whether they have a sports psychologist or you're going to be the one that teaches them that. you're gonna be at least a B plus, A minus mental player if you can get those 5 down. Okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, before you leave the mental game, the value of letting players and parents know that mistakes are okay things. They're wonderful things in some ways because they're roadmaps for us, but they're not bad things. The word failure is not, I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah.
That sort of, as you said, numbers to help share your players with the reality of maybe what is a good shot. If that can be okay, it can really free people up to not be so worried about the bad things that could happen and really go after the good things that are available.
See, I love that. I caddied for my kids a ton growing up. You know, it was a great experience, but I also felt like that was the best way to just see what was happening and help them with their thought process on the course. I'm an alpha, I'm stubborn, my kids are. I don't view stubbornness as a negative thing. I think that's an essential quality, that 90% of that is positive, 10% of maybe stubbornness, you know, keeps you from maybe seeing your weakness soon enough or, you know, wanting to learn a little bit. But Preston has always played an extremely aggressive style of golf. And I wanted that. He wanted to be the best in the world. He wants to be on the tour. There's some calculated players, and there's some really aggressive players. He's always driven it great. So off the tee, hey, play to your strength. But he would go for everything. He needed to learn bogey avoidance. He needed to learn, hey, when to bite the bullet and when to go for it. But the great thing, so when I was caddying for him, there'd be a situation, and I just ask, hey, what are your two scenarios? Instead of saying, hey, you're going to hit this, because I know what he should hit. I know that 3-wood on a downhill lie, and he's already a shut-faced player. He doesn't have any ball speed. That thing is going to go really low, dribble in the hazard or the rough, but he's a stubborn person. I am too. The best lessons I've ever learned are just from doing it. So if I keep Preston or Grace or Cam or these other students that I watch play and you evaluate them, if I explain it as a mistake or don't let them make what someone would call a mistake, Preston puts that in the computer. Oh, God, that was kind of like dumb. Well, I take a step further. It wasn't dumb. It's just you didn't understand the launch was going to happen, what the lie was already going to do with the launch, and so on. And then it's like, that makes sense. Okay, so let your players play, and then they can learn from their own mistakes or own decisions and nothing. And so I try to teach and coach juniors as if they were tour pros. When's the last time, who's Brian? Good to see you. When's the last time that you didn't have the final say on what you were going to do? When it was you in a player caddy situation, who always had the final say? The player, every time. So if I'm trying to train a kid to learn to think the right way, guess what they get? The final say. And then that just breeds confidence in their proper decisions, or they get information on, okay, maybe that wasn't the best, decision. I'll adjust accordingly next time. But don't cheat your students out of learning the real lessons that stick by using your experience. Yes, we've all been in the game a lot longer than them. We kind of know what they should do or what the percentages say. But at a really young age, don't keep them from making that mistake. Once you see it, you can explain it later. And you explain it instead of just saying, don't do that, explain why. Okay, what was the other option? So I think that helps kids is ask, hey, what were your options there? What was your next? And a lot of times they're like, there wasn't. They were never thinking that. But the value in me letting Preston play super aggressive. He was playing at the Walker Cup, and he hit his best drive of the day at St. Andrews on 16. It was light rough on the left. He should have just bailed left. He went down the middle, hit a good drive, went in a pop bunker. His opponent, Preston, was tied. Hit it to the right, hit out of bounds, bounced in. Well, number one, his training was good because he knows, that he would consider a lucky break. It's hard not to, but it is what it is, okay? He made a mistake on the course management side, pitched it out, lost the hole, he's 1 down. He wins 17 going at the back left pin at St. Andrews, which is extremely risky. He was one down. He understands match play situations, but still, the other opponent was in the pop bunker. He didn't necessarily need to go for it. But he had been playing aggressive his whole life, that he was used to the feeling in his body of going to pull off a difficult shot. Wins the hole, ties it. All summer he had been fighting a right shot. He never fought a right shot his whole career. Shot face player. If he pushed it, it wouldn't curve to the right. He was hitting some curvers to the right. Make his body feel anything different. My roommate, Charles Howell at Oklahoma State, was a very conservative player, amazing player. But in situations where you got to take on a shot, it's going to make your body feel a little bit different because you haven't conditioned it that way. So not always. Some players need to play conservative based on their skill sets. Okay? I find that coaches and parents, they have their kids play way too conservative when course management and game management are different. Grace was playing great as a freshman at the state championship, and there was a hole where all the girls in the group before laid up, tough hole, and the two players in her group laid up. And she was very inexperienced. She just laid up, and she had like a 5-iron into the green. And so after she ended up taking second or third place, bogeyed the hole, I said, Grace, what's your greatest strength? Driving. All right, when it comes to losing and winning a tournament, I'd rather lose with my strength. I can live with that. So sure enough, the very next year, same scenario, she hit driver. And it's not if she hit it in the desert hitting a driver, I would have said, that's just the wrong play. You could have laid up. No, for her, that's the right shot. And then if she hits it in the desert, that's a bad shot, not a bad decision. And bad shots happen. For the most part, when a parent sees a kid hit a bad shot, it was a bad decision. No. Or get in a situation where they thought, wow, how could they go over the green? Well, they bladed it. That's why it went over the green. Why'd they hit it in the desert? Well, people hit bad shots. And another thing when I was explaining like the expectations, I always tell the parent and the student, when you watch golf on TV on a Thursday, Friday, it's the highlight reel. It's condensed. What's the most exciting thing to show when you're showing a condensed coverage on a Thursday and Friday? What do you see?
Great shots.
Chip ins, putts, hit iron shots up tight. For the longer players, some drives, but they don't really show that many unless it's a feature group. They'll show just the very best shots, and it gives these kids and parents a very skewed perception of what they're really doing out there. And then on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, they're showing the lead groups. And what are those how many great weeks does a great player, a tour player have? We just said it already. 1 or 2. And so they're showing the players that are having the best week possibly of their year. So once again, it gets skewed. But if you watch a true final round, you start to see all these mistakes by the people that lose. And that's a great thing for the student to see too, that hey, they're human as well, okay? We talked about the strengths and weaknesses. I always challenge the kid, hey, in time, if I see too many things that I add to your charts, then you aren't thinking hard enough, okay? You're not being detailed enough. Then the last thing, we are products of our environment and training. So as a failed player, one of the things that I did really well, and my dad did well with me and Daniel, is we were always competing, always playing. Some range work if something needed to be worked on, but we were always playing on the course. So when I failed as a player, I hurt my back in 2004. And a lot of my friends and family, trying to make me feel better, were like, oh, that's why I didn't have a successful career compared to what I thought it would be. That wasn't the truth. When I got hurt, I started bouncing around instructor to instructor, trying to make up for, I'd already played a few events on tour, and I made the mistake of comparing my bad golf to someone's good golf, and comparing me as a rookie with some of the best players in the world. It's going to make you feel inadequate. I try to prepare my students for that, saying, hey, at each level that you move up, you're going to have someone that's better than you. And don't just, that person at one time had to take that step to get better. So I compared my good golf to their bad golf, compared myself to the very best players in the world, which wasn't fair. And it put me down this road of constant new instructor. Okay, work hard on that. Didn't work. Okay, go to the next one. And pretty soon, I made an okay coach. I'd learned a lot from other teachers, and I was like, wow, this whole time I was getting ready to be a coach, and I didn't even know it. So I've erred on the side of being on the course because I went from a kid that grew up on the course learning shots and scoring and competing and feeling that buzz of playing for something to I sat on the range for hours and hours and hours, and I lost my scoring ability. That's what happened, is the strengths I had, I couldn't keep strengths because I was spending so much time on the range. So with the junior students, the practice sessions are 3 things on the range, or when you're teaching them a skill set, whether it's putting, chipping, bunkers, rough play, any of the things that they mention on their strength and weakness charts, the technique through exaggeration and repetition. Then once they make it look different and it looks like we made some change, then it's, okay, you don't look at the camera anymore to compare feel and real. Then you're into on the range, okay, let's start choosing some shots, change the angle, change the club, and then third, let's go see if that feel is playable. I don't like wasting a ton of time having a lesson, having them work on it for 2 weeks, and all to find that on the course it's just not a reasonable feel. Because we can say things, the same thing in so many different ways. If we can find out quicker that it's not, now the person has to stick to the changes, but in general, we do that with Tony. Tony is not a range rat. He does the work on the range, but then it's always, okay, I gotta go see if it's playable. And we find out real quick if it is. And so I've always erred on being on the course and then erring on the scoring side, okay? So one of the things when we're trying to simulate tournament play, and some of us don't have the ability to get on the course as much as others, so we'll kind of take some suggestions, and I will too, of how to make range work more simulated. But the whole goal to me in practice is to make it demanding, to make it intense, sometimes make it unfair, but it's to put a simulation in, and I haven't found many simulations better than peer pressure. Okay? Nothing can substitute the feelings of being actually in competition. Nothing does. But peer pressure, a money game, new players to play with, new people taking a look at a shot. I'll put students on the spot. A good player will come up on the range, and I'll introduce them to the student, the junior, and say, hey, hit one ball for him. And I'll kind of mess with their head and say, hey, if you hit a good one, they think you're a great player. If you hit a bad one, they don't think you're any good. Obviously, I don't believe that. But I'm trying to create a little bit of a little heat, okay? So what are some ways you guys have found that create a more competitive or a more pressure-filled situation in your lessons or camps or practice sessions?
I paid him out.
Yeah, there you go. I do that too. I was a gambler growing up, so that's a great idea.
Yeah, we'll play skins, or we'll play, for whatever, $5 or $10 or whatever it is, and then when they win, then I make all the other kids cheer for the one who won.
That's awesome. That's a great idea. Peer pressure, money games, on tour. How many people play money games? All the time. So you might as well start them, and that's one of the disclosures with the parents. I said, hey, I may be paying them out. We may be playing for money. I'm not going to play for their money, but are you okay with that? And if they're not, then I don't give up on the parent. I just say, hey, every great player usually is a degenerate, gambler. So, so just get used to it. So I started playing money games when I was 13. I came back with $140, and my dad was so mad because he wasn't a gambler, and I was like, this is what all my buddies, they're good players, do. And so I told him I wasn't doing it, but I was doing it, and just kept the money him from seeing the money. So love that. Pay him out. What other ideas to create a little bit more simulation, more expectation?
I would always have a crew during the summer months where the parents would drop the kids off, and I was sort of the dad. And they'd spend the day playing games,
That's awesome.
playing, competing, love to compete, and they compete against each other, not for money. I used to say,
Yeah.
buy a Coke, buy whatever, play for something. But they played so many games around that green. Those crazy Nicholson games where they flopped over their heads and stuff. They do it, and they never hurt each other.
Yeah.
I was coaching high school golf and
Thank you.
running junior camps. We used to play a game called Anything Goes. And just as long as you didn't touch them, you could do anything you wanted.
Yeah.
It didn't matter whatever point of your swing, putt, whatever, how close you wanted to stand to them, whatever you wanted. Sometimes everyone would go quiet. Sometimes everyone would start to just come down. But that was a lot of fun.
I love that. Same thing. You're trying to simulate. The thing I like about some heckling and some needling is a lot of the times the things that we say to each other are kind of things that we've already said to ourselves subconsciously. Okay, so I played for Coach Holder, Mike Holder, Oklahoma State, and he was known as being a tough guy. So in the qualifying, these are qualifying rounds that are qualifying us to go to tournaments for Oklahoma State, and we were a very good team. Charles Howe, Bo Van Pelt, Edward Lohr. You want to play on your college team, and he's up in the qualifiers. Carson Creek's already a really intimidating golf course, okay? And he'd be like, "Oh, left or right wind. Isn't that the wind you struggle with?" And then he would continue to say things that he thought that you possibly could be thinking. That's a pretty big area, but if you miss the fairway, it's a lost ball. Just kept on needling and needling to where some of the other players would kind of fold under it, but for me, it made me more, I'm going to prove him wrong. It turned it into a positive emotion, like watch what I do here. And so it was kind of interesting as he was doing it. I realized, oh, okay, he's trying to see what response I have to him. And so that helped me a lot to where when I got in situations where I felt a little bit of self-doubt, it was almost like I was trying to challenge myself into that situation. Like, well, I know where Holder would think this is going, so let's go, right? Any other ideas? That's awesome. Once again, giving a new situation, a new person to prove themselves in front. Awesome idea. I used Instagram Live, Instagram Stories, okay? When Preston and Grace, I don't do it as much with Cam because he's a different developmental stage, okay? I don't want to put too much pressure on him until he's ready for that. There's always a breaking point of which players we know what to do and push, and there's a saying that says, make uncomfortable the comfortable. That would be your better players, and comfort the others, right? You're trying to be more supportive and get them to not get discouraged. If they keep showing up, they got a chance to get better. But Preston and Grace, once they told me they wanted to be the best in the world, well, having a few thousand or how many ever people watching around that you play every shot, not just the highlights. With my youngest son, I do the highlights. I'm trying to build self-belief. I'm trying to build that whole idea, I see my best shots, sear those in the brain. But with Preston and Grace, I did that at the same age as Cam, basically the positive shots, the positive things. But as they got better and better, I was like, this is an invaluable way for people to see a practice round with their teammates or people in the camps. They're going to show every shot. Well, you're going to have to play in front of thousands and thousands, and then you're going to get comments on social media that are rough, and you have to deal with all those things as you get better. So I always like using that as a tool to put eyeballs on them, right? Put eyeballs on them. You hear often on the course, or parents and some students, I can't seem to take it to the course, okay? So those of us that maybe at certain courses we don't have as much access to get on the course early in the mornings or late at nights, if that's not an option, on the range, how can you simulate, can you show the picture of the tree trunks here, Jamie and Patrick practice on? So I thought this was a great idea. I'm always trying to learn. I saw something I liked, took a picture of it. So this would be a great way to simulate an expectation, a pressure. So Patrick just goes down his clubs and puts them inside there, curves them left to right, right to left. It's 20 yards wide. All of a sudden, that creates a feeling of expectation right there, okay? And so I call it the illusion of competence. Even I fall into that. I'm hitting balls for fun, and I'm hitting, and I'm like, oh, this feels really good. Well, Boyd, you're aiming down the middle of the range. The pull draw looks good. The push cut looks good. It's the illusion of competence, and I'm hitting ball after ball. You don't have the timing of the break in between the shots. If you're going to be stuck on the range, change clubs, wash the grooves, shoot it with a laser, go through the pre-shot routine, and chart everything. Can you show the slides where we have some of the charts? I always have whiteboards out for any station that I'm doing. Every single person in that group lesson or the camp is seeing exactly what everybody else is doing. Once again, just putting eyeballs, expectation on it. One more. Oh, right there. So it doesn't matter what the skill set is. I just like people seeing exactly what they're doing. You have payouts, top 2, something like that, top 3, depending on how many players. Can you go to another slide with some charts? It's with the, yeah, same thing. Every player has a chart. They were doing some wedges, 6 yards long, 95 yards, what club. If some of them have contact issues, they put that, heel thin, chunk. And so every shot, they're competing, but they're charting it. Not just, hey, who won? Oh, let's see by how much. And then the one thing I do is the last shot of any skill set that they're testing out in a competition, if they're the person that has the shot to win, we all stop and we all watch. And we pull out the camera, okay? So we call it the money ball. I'll do that when we're on the course. Hey, hole number 3 and hole number 7 today, count twice. Oh, coach, that's not fair. I'm trying to get you on that tee and saying, don't screw up, this counts double, right? Just trying to make the players a little bit more uncomfortable than they normally are when they practice. Will you go back to that whole the one that you first showed? This is what Preston and the junior students I have start to do when they get better and better and they're needing to find that quarter of a shot, the eighth of a shot. Just go back, one more. Right there. Okay, so huge fan of kids. They have lasers nowadays. They'll shoot a number and they hit the shot. Once they get good enough to where they can hit the back of the ball consistently to where it's worth charting yardages, carry distance. Carry, carry, carry. And the kids that don't spin as much, they will have to have a general rollout idea too. But as the player gets better and better, it becomes just a carry number. Okay? So Preston and my students will be charting in real time what distance they are, how far it went, and then all these writings on a hole would have been somewhat in real time the gems that he could be learning or the mistakes that he wants to rectify. And then he'll file those away and has them. So it's one of those things that in real time, or he's making a note of that course. As you play a course, the first round of a tournament, second round, you should be learning some things about it. He may put them right in there, okay? Just a way to have it on your mind, put it down, okay?
Excuse me, Boyd.
Yeah, go ahead.
You talked about earlier about, not being able to get on a golf course.
Yeah.
So with today's, the simulators, like about simulation,
Yeah.
and playing into the simulators, as far as transitioning from there onto the course, I just opened an indoor place and haven't
Yeah.
seen that ease. I don't know if you have any experience on that, of practicing all day in the simulator on a golf course to taking out to the golf course. And I know there's people in here that have done that and wondered how that transition has.
I don't have any experience with that. Does anyone have any advice on that? That teaches a lot out of a simulator and then is trying to transition from that onto the course? My suggestion is the transition from indoor in a simulator and off a mat would to be get on a range and make sure they're truly hitting the back of the ball first. That's what I would do. Me, if I'm just thinking real quick, because a lot of times you can tell if you chunk it or not based on if you have a launch monitor up there, the spin changes and whatnot, but that's, off the top of my head, just start with their low point after being on a mat and then go from there.
I actually work out of an indoor spot, City Golf in Sherman Oaks, and I think it's like finding a low point and seeing how that translates on the range. And I try to encourage them to get on the golf course as quick as possible to see how they're delivering the club and where the low point is.
But as far as playing golf on the
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
In my opinion, it translates.
Yeah.
I've seen success with it. Like I said, it's just getting them from the indoor facility out to the golf course as fast as possible.
Very cool.
I have a golf center, and I do a lot of indoor, and I think it's learning cause and effect, so that they understand, a pull is because of this, and a push is because of that, or it's fading because I didn't supinate, or whatever it is. Because then when they're out there on their own, they'll know what they should start trying to do.
Yeah. That's great. I love that. Just knowledge of their game. Just gives them a baseline, right? I'm going to end with one thing. So when the kids were young, just to kind of show you that that's what we were always doing, I want to go to a couple of those slides of the videos. So as a kid isn't very good, the younger junior golfers you start with, I say, and I did it with my kids, good shot, good swing. Or good swing, good shot. If they miss the ball, good swing. If they hit it, good shot. So first one, let's go right here. And this is Preston teaching Cam. So the things that I've taught Preston, when Cam started playing, he would talk the same way. So this is just in our backyard. Can you turn the audio up on that? Please? No audio. Anyway, Preston says, good shot, because he hit the ball. Hit another one. And it's just constant reinforcement, positive. At that age, that's all it should be, okay? So let's go to Grace, the girl in the purple hitting a shot. How happy she is because I said, great shot. She comes back and says, I want to hit another one. Okay? So I'm trying to build that psyche. But same girl, 3 years later, once she got serious at golf, being good at something is fun. Make it fun for them, all fun until they show a true interest to get better. Then being fun is good, or being good at something is fun. Then it gets into the skill sets. Okay? I'll leave you with, let's go, one last video of Preston. Okay, he's 8 years old, putting in the backyard, his stroke's terrible. He's putting from 3 feet. His goal is to be, got to. Okay, so he makes the 10th putt, and at the U.S. Junior, he does like this odd, like left-handed fist pump that I've never seen before, and I thought, I have seen this before. So as a kid, his 10th putt from 3 feet, and it was generous, probably 2.5. We get to the money ball, he lines it up, gets behind, he makes it, and he goes, yes! As he got older and older and older, he just kept that same drive, that same competitive spirit. That was just him and me, and he still cared. So the more we can simulate things, it's going to be better off for our students. And then when they play, I always say play for you. My kids play for them. That it's not selfish. That's the most unselfish thing they can do is play for them. You're the one that's competitive. You're the one that's put in the time, and you're the one that's sacrificed. That's all the pressure you need. That's a healthy pressure. If a student and individual sports players are competitive for the most part, and golf requires so much time, and to be great, it requires sacrifice. So those 3 things I teach the parents and the players, that's the proper pressure. And let's keep all the other unnecessary pressures away from our kids. So I appreciate you all being here. It was a privilege and honor. And let's go help our junior golfers.
Thank you, Boyd. That was fantastic. Our next segment is going to take place out on our field driving range. And so we'll give you a few minutes to get out to the golf carts, which we have staged on the far end of the parking lot. We encourage you to sit 3 to a cart if possible because we have a limited number of carts. And then if you just sit tight, our staff will direct you out to the field range.